Hello, this is the RPG Crawler, and welcome to another RPG review. This time we're going to take a look at an indie RPG from Benny Anderson called They Came from the Stars. It's a tabletop RPG that thematically centers around B-grade sci-fi movies of the mid to late 20th century, although it's open enough to fit a number of different genres. I was given a review copy of this game, which I understand will be available later in electronic format. First of all, the version of the PDF this view looks at clocks in at about 93 pages, including front and back cover and credits. It includes rules, an example adventure, character templates, pre-mades, and an adventure generator. Interior formatting is an inline block style with black and white stills taken from public domain sci-fi movies from the 50s onward, along with some minor original layout art. Overall presentation is legible, and I believe that the use of the still shot art leads a thematically appropriate feel to the game. I believe that it was a good choice to avoid illustrations in this particular instance, although I almost might have gone with an almost dossier-style layout for the pre-made characters, but that's just my personal preference. So what about the system itself? It uses a custom D20 system. No, not D20 like the D20 system, but rather a system that uses a D20. The system does not utilize DCs, but rather a simple success-failure test against the character's skill or ability, with contested checks basically offering a chance to undo a success already earned. In the more straightforward checks, it's simply accomplished by rolling a D20 and attempting to get the skill value or lower. In the event of a contested check, once this initial check succeeds, if it does, the defender then makes their own check, with a penalty based on a fraction of the initiator's relevant skill. It may seem a little awkward at first, but as everything basically uses the same method, checks end up being very swift in play, and there's not a lot of flipping back and forth for rules, interactions, etc. Interestingly enough, the mathematics behind the default range of ability scores and skills means that a character is liable to have a success-failure ratio not uncommon to actual sci-fi B-movies, for better or for worse. There is a minor issue regarding critical success and failure, in that the 20 is considered a critical success and a 1 is considered a critical failure. My only issue with this is that, as usual in such systems, having low rolls is good, and it should seem that a 1 should be the critical success and a 20 should be the critical failure. It's mathematically irrelevant, but it just kind of breaks the whole idea of low is good and high is bad to instantly switch the ends like that. It's not a major issue, and this is far from the first system that's guilty of having that quirk. In fact, the only real problem I had with the system was figuring it out. I needed to reread it a few times because the way it's presented and written is a little bit unclear, and that's an ongoing issue throughout the version of this RPG that I looked at. We'll get into that later. Character creation is very straightforward, consisting of a single die roll for each primary characteristic: Phys, Dex, Will, Per, Int, and Charisma. 4 skills are then tagged as Adept skills, and then secondary characteristics like hit points, initiative, melee bonus, and movement are then derived from the primary characteristics. Skills are each based off of one of the 6 primary characteristics, and simply add the number of ranks in that skill to the number you need to roll to succeed. Combat rounds are about 3 seconds long, giving just enough time for an attack and some other action. 2 hit rolls are just opposed skill checks as described above, while damage is a dice range versus armor that serves as mitigation rather than avoidance. There's no easy way to regain hit points, so generally speaking, characters are going to be a little bit more fragile than the heroic figures a fantasy gamer might be used to, which is actually in accordance with the genre. There are rules for aiming at different parts of the body, automatic fire, cover, thrown items, etc. About as you'd expect for a reasonably modern genre combat system. There's also a pretty extensive rule for environmental damage and damage over time to cover the risks of fighting on unusual planets or in space. An optional dismemberment rule is available to make things really, really dangerous. Since a lot of sci-fi movies from the era were also horror movies, there's also a basic shock and fear system to inflict on player characters if needed. Experience points are available for character build-up, although this game forgoes the usual character levels for direct skill improvement. And Destiny points allow for 1 reroll per session to help give characters a bit more longevity. Basic equipment lists for a variety of weapons and armor exist, although it's more of what you'd expect from a rules-light system, with very little in the way of indications of value, things like that. I presume characters are simply supposed to find things during an adventure within reason. There are some basic randomization guidelines in case the game master doesn't feel particularly like detailing out every detailed little thing. Some example monsters are given, and while the actual statistics are relatively straightforward, each one has a page or more of background, giving the impression that creatures encountered in this game tend more towards unique beings than simply run-of-the-mill fodder like you'd see in a fantasy game. While there's a fair amount of creatures described here, and it takes a decent chunk of the book, the most valuable part of the monster list is the ability to create your own monsters by picking apart the examples. Likewise, the introduction adventure given for 3 to 4 players is decent and relatively simplistic, but gives a good sense of what you need to design your own adventures for this particular game. It's not spectacular, but it gets the job done. This is followed by some pages of character sheets, character templates, and pre-mades, and then most of the existing tables from the book in a quick reference format. The adventure generator takes a few more pages and consists more of randomized tables that can give a general outline of an adventure with a little bit of tinkering. The system itself isn't bad, and it is conducive to presenting scenarios that you'd expect to see in a genre-appropriate film. In terms of construction, I don't see much in the way of glaring design or usage issues, although as I said before, the writing can be a little bit awkward in places. I can only recommend that the author reread them and expand where necessary, and perhaps add 1 or 2 more examples in certain places. It's not so bad that one can't get the general gist of the rules with a quick reread or 2, but every little bit of polish on this is going to help. I think overall this game does what it aimed to do, and it does it pretty well. It remains to be seen what the individual cost will be, so at this point in time I can't make a judgment call on that, but I would definitely see this system being quick enough to fill in a couple of gaming nights when you're taking a break from your main system. I'm not sure how sustainable a truly long-term campaign with this would be, so you'll probably want to keep your plots to roughly movie-sized or movie series-sized. When this finally gets a full release, I will put links down below. For now, this has been the RPG Crawler with They Came from the Stars. If you like what you've seen, remember to leave a like, comment if you've got feedback, and subscribe for more RPG content. If you're feeling particularly generous, please check out my Patreon at patreon.com/rpgcrawler to get early access to videos like this, access to patron-only streams and chat, and occasional patron exclusives. Until next time, take care and goodbye.